Welcome to the Outer Realm with Michelle Desrochers and Amelia Pisano. Airing live on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 FM in New Orleans.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Wednesday night segment of The Outer Realm. We are broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network, UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 from the Gulf Coast and 107.7 FM from New Orleans. We're fully sponsored by the amazing people over at Folgers Coffee who have been a part of our journey since the very beginning. So thank you, Folgers. We couldn't or wouldn't want to do it without you. Also, big thank you to Dr. Snick, the sonic surgeon, aka Justin Snicker, for his contribution of his time, his music, and his voice for the intro that you just heard. He's an award-winning composer of Halloween, horror, sci-fi, and dark wave electronic music, which can be found on all of your favorite streaming music platforms. Big thank you. We appreciate you so very much. Also, big thank you to Steve McGinnis, the artist behind the banners and logos here at the show. Check him out on Facebook and Instagram. He also specializes in the horror genre, but does phenomenal commission pieces of any sort. So, The Outer Realm, yay! We are really pleased to be a proud sponsor of the upcoming event, Contact and Symposium 2024. Which is going to take place on April 20th, 2024 at the Off-World Bar in Toronto, Ontario. And the event will be from 10 a.m. until 5 p.m. So this is going to be a first for them. And basically, they are still looking to get their guests in order. So it's Contact and Disclosure Symposium. And that will be again in Toronto. So also really pleased to announce that we are happy to sponsor again for the second year running the Halifax Paranormal Symposium, which will be held on Saturday, October 12th, 2024 at the Halifax Tower Hotel and Conference Center from 9 a.m. until 6 p.m. So 2 great events, and we're really, really pleased to be a part of it. So hopefully you guys will be able to, check it out, especially if you're in the area. Sure to disappoint. I know the Halifax Paranormal Symposium had their first one last year, and it did phenomenally well. So check them out. So tonight, we welcome back Jack Roth. He's going to be discussing his film series, which has produced the award-winning documentary films. And this one is going to be Extraordinary, The Seeding, which was done back in 2019. And I've seen it. I have to tell you, I found it enlightening yet heartbreaking at the same time. You hear a lot about contactees who are essentially, having babies, and their babies are taken from them, and all kinds of things. There's just so much to be, so much to consider. Then you have to kind of wonder who's really taking them. Are they extraterrestrial? Are they maybe my lab? I mean, there's just a lot to really think about there. So we're just going to wait for Jack to chime in. And for those of you guys who want to just read the whole, the description of the show, you can go on the Outer Realm page. You can go on UFO, Paranormal United Public Radio page. You can go on any of the Canada's Most Haunted pages, and they're there so you can read it. So just trying to gear everybody up for tonight. So Amelia's under the weather tonight, so boo, she's not here, and I know she really wanted to be here. We had such a great time with Jack the last time he was on the show talking about his book, Killing Kennedy. So I thought, wow, this is going to be pretty cool. So anyway, everybody, without further ado, our special guest, Jack Roth. Hello.
Hey, how are you? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me back.
Oh, pleasure. Big, big boo for Amelia. She's under the weather, so she's asked me to extend her apologies and a big hello and a big thank you, of course, for the book. So
Oh yeah, well, that's a shame she's not here.
yeah, she was disappointed. It's just, unfortunately, what do you do? It's the time of year besides that, right? But I've been gearing up, like, yeah, I've been waiting for it. I wanted to, to really talk about this movie. I've seen it. I've seen all the films, of course, and I am a fan. And I was really torn with this one. So, because it made me feel sort of like, wow, this is incredible. And yet, wow, this is kind of sad at the same time. So before we even get to that point, why don't you just walk us through, the whole background behind it? What made you want to do this sort of film?
Sure. Well, we had done the first film, and it did very well, and that's when we got distribution for that.
Right,
And we really wanted to tell this complete story, and we felt like we could do it in a trilogy, and that's when we decided to do the Extraordinary trilogy.
right,
And so the first one we did on a lower budget. It still was incredible, but it was really just one man's story.
right.
But what what happened was, as we were doing that documentary, we started to talk to all of these people, many of them women, who started to tell us about these unexplained pregnancies.
Mm,
And it led us to believe that, okay, this is the second part of this story,
right,
because you could talk about lights in the sky, you can talk about being abducted and being on an alien craft,
right.
but then what's happening while you're up there? And this is where the seeding, that's what this film focuses on.
Right.
And it's not just, we talked about unexplained pregnancies, but really what we learned was that people were being abducted, and sometimes it was the same, they would see lights in the sky, and it was this process, and then all of a sudden they would have maybe had missing time, where they felt something had happened at night while they were sleeping,
Mm,
or they saw things, and some of it might have been repressed memories, so
right,
they didn't realize it for years.
right.
And so what would happen is, I'll start with the typical scenario, the
Of course.
typical event, where you had men and women, but let's take a female.
Right.
And we were hearing these stories about when they did, if they did regression therapy or these memories came back to them, that they were taken by ET, brought up to a craft. Now we know going back to the 60s, early 60s, Betty and Barney Hill, they were abducted,
Yes.
they were taken into a craft. They remember things in regression about being taken. And Betty Hill remembered talking to these ETs and trying to communicate with them, and they showed her the star map and all this. Fascinating. But what we didn't know, we didn't, that in that case, we didn't hear about what this was. And now what it is they're abducted and they do experiments, right? But what kind of experiments are they doing?
Mm,
And that people might remember, they might recall big needles, they might remember
yeah.
being paralyzed, they might remember uh, skin and saliva and blood samples being taken. So it's obviously they're it's a medical experiment of some kind.
Right.
And so and what women learn and feel is that they were at some point during that process impregnated,
Mm,
not in the traditional sense, but in a very high level technology, uh, what we would call hybridization program.
right.
So they're putting some level of their DNA, some portion of their DNA, mixing it with whatever, put impregnating, and what they would do is this. There were males that were obviously that been abducted as well, and from the males they would take sperm and other things,
Right. Right.
and DNA, and they would do what they do in their very advanced way, and then they would basically impregnate a woman, a female, and the
Right.
female would then be back on Earth.
Mhm.
So then what would happen is over the course of the next couple of months, they would feel different. They would, sometimes they knew they were pregnant.
Mhm.
And in a lot of cases, it was the kind of thing where it was impossible. And, we spoke to several women who don't sleep with men.
Right.
So they couldn't have been. How?
Right.
Right. So it's not like,
Yeah.
whoops, I forgot about that. Okay. But this was like, there was no way they could have gotten pregnant, yet they were pregnant.
Right.
Some went to doctors, and the doctors would do the tests and say, okay, you're pregnant. They do blood work or whatever.
Mhm.
And, your early stages pregnancy was, I
Right.
would say, the first trimester. And then what would happen is at a certain point in time, still fairly early on, there would be an incubation period. Then they would be abducted again, and during that abduction,
Mhm.
the fetus would be taken out of them.
Mhm.
So the next morning they'd wake up with strange memories, or no memories, but feeling really weird and
Mhm.
very strange, physically drained, blood on their pillows, blood on the bed, like weird, right? Something
Yeah.
happened to them.
Right.
Yet now they know they're not pregnant anymore. And a lot of them went to doctors, and the doctor's like, you're not pregnant anymore. And with doctors, though, they think, well, when you have a miscarriage, then
Mhm.
your body absorbs the fetus. So of
Right.
course, for doctors, that's what they go with.
Right.
But these women know what happened to them.
Right.
And so then what winds up happening is, so now the fetus is back on these ships, okay? And they are continue to be incubated out of the woman's body, and they come to term. And at some point, usually later on, it could be a couple years later, 5 years later, they're abducted again. And during this abduction, they meet their hybrid children.
Right.
And during that time, they bring out this little child, and it looks like a hybrid. It looks like
Mhm.
huge, big eyes, almond shaped,
Right.
very small features, usually reddish or or lighter, stringy hair. Obviously a hybrid.
Right.
And these children are incredibly intelligent, and they want the women, who are in essence their mothers,
Right.
to mother them a little, hug them, stay with them, play with them.
Right.
They're not allowed to stay with them because the women are then taken back to Earth,
Right.
in bed or wherever it is. So
Right.
then now, who knows what's happening to these hybrids?
Right.
So this is the basic, I say basic story because some are a little different than others.
Right. Right.
But these were the stories we kept hearing. So we thought it would be a natural progression to do Extraordinary 1. After we did that, then do Extraordinary the Seeding, and focus on, okay, people are seeing these things in the sky. People are being abducted. Things are happening. There's stuff on their clothing. They have missing time. What are these false pregnancies? What's going on here? Are there hybridization programs? Does the military know about them? Right. So then that's when we get into all interviewing whoever we interview, et cetera, to try to determine and document more than anything, to educate people what's happening on these craft.
It was very interesting to me because you often hear about women, because they're the ones who are pregnant. But I liked that you actually spoke to men as well. And people don't realize, like, it's just as traumatizing for them. Listening to a couple of the interviews, my heart went out to them. I was just like, oh my gosh, you don't think about it. It's a violation for them as well.
Most certainly.
Yeah.
Not exactly in the same physical way,
Of
but
course.
anyone who's abducted, first of all, is abducted against their will, unless they get to the point where they're like, well, I decided when I came into this life
Yeah,
that
yes.
I was okay with being abducted. So
Right.
they actually agreed to that somehow.
Right.
I don't know how that works,
Yeah, so
but
some kind of an agreement in place somewhere.
agreement or something. But
Yes.
let's assume, let's just take it from this lifetime and say
Okay.
you're being abducted against your will, because
Right.
quite frankly, it's terrifying to people.
For sure.
Only after years and years of coming to terms with it are people like, yeah, yeah, it's good. I'm a starseed,
Right.
right?
Right.
Okay, but it took you years of going through trauma and post traumatic stress to get to that point. And that's what we were trying. This was by far the most emotional film we did. It was
Wow.
the most personal film we did. And it was because you had these people on camera. And like you said, Rob, the guy that we talked to, he went through hell.
Right.
And and had these abduction experiences, and then got sick and lost a ton of weight, and he didn't know what was happening to him, and he
There's
saw
a
all
lot
these.
of weight. Yes.
Yeah, he almost died. And
Wow.
so, but with the guys, they're doing, it's genetic testing, it's
Yes.
genetic engineering, it's genetic research, and their hybridization. It's very clear that they're creating hybrid children
Mhm.
from.
Yeah.
That's how we ended the first film. We ended the first film with, well, hybrid children. But then we kind of left it at that. And
Right.
then boom, and the second one was like, okay, what does this mean? What's going on here?
Right.
And the women in our film, first of all, the amount of courage it took.
Oh,
And
yes.
like I said, it was emotional. I mean, interviewing them, and just talking to all these people.
Mhm.
um and a lot, you're right, a lot of people who saw the film, fascinating for sure. I mean,
Mhm.
that's, we got that across the board, which was good.
Mhm.
And we're trying to educate people. And I said, it was people, it was dark, these were not good experiences. I
Mhm.
said, well, these were people are telling us, like, like, again, if we talk to somebody years later, and there were people who were like, well, you come to terms with it, right?
Right.
And you realize that you have these children,
Right.
more than one, by the way. And that's
Right.
another part of this, is not just, usually it's not just one child. It could be dozens. I mean, certainly more than one.
Right.
And it has to do with either, some people say blood type. I think DNA. I think it's got to go further than blood
It's
type. I
gotta be
think
a lineage of sorts as well.
it has to be. It has
Yes.
to be, because it has to, these scientists, these ET scientists, and they're so far advanced than we are. Now, I
Mhm.
mean, when you think about it though, what are we doing here? We've created hybrids,
It's
a
true.
goat or a sheep or something we
Oh,
created.
our feeble attempts. Yeah.
Our feeble attempts, but now you read
Right.
about, like, they're going to bring back the woolly mammoth, and this is a
Yes.
real
Yes.
thing. We will have woolly mammoths back on Earth. We might have the Tasmanian tiger back on Earth, the
Right.
dodo bird back on Earth.
Right.
And when you think about, and that's our tech, that's our, as far as advanced as
Right.
we are. Think about civilizations that are 1,000 or 10,000 or 100,000 years more advanced.
Sure.
So they're,
Sure.
and
But they
then
still need us.
they need us. And
Yeah.
they need us because there's several, and we could talk about this, very interesting. It's a great part of
I say
this.
let's do it for sure. Yeah.
Why do they need us? And
Good
then, so
question.
is it, first of all, why are they doing it?
Right.
And so then the question is their race dying?
Mhm.
Are they trying to create a superior race?
Mhm.
Are we hybrids already?
I offer
And
that.
well, I mean, think about it. That whole missing link thing. I mean, how did we, or do we have ET? I don't like to say it because I'm a
Right.
documentarian. I'm trying, I don't want to
Right.
say, but honestly, after everything that I've researched and experienced, I
Mhm.
think that our DNA has been messed with for thousands of years,
Right.
and starting, 100,000 years ago.
Right.
And so that's how we evolved.
I
And
believe
so
that.
we already have some of these traits. So, but the question is, so, and this is the thing that I love talking about. And I want to talk to you about what you think, because this is where it gets really cool.
Okay.
They, for whatever reason, and here's the kicker. Here's the other factor. It's more than one ET race. most likely that's doing the hybrid experiments.
I
So there,
completely agree with you on that.
and there could be different, therefore more than one agenda.
Yes.
One agenda could be we need to save our race. So we're doing hybridization experiments. And this is, I say this real quick. I don't want to hog the, but
No,
this
no,
is
no. This
important.
is you
Yeah.
know how we are on the show. This is about you. So talk away.
Bovine DNA is bovine hemoglobin, cow's hemoglobin, is very close to human hemoglobin in the way it's structured.
Yes.
Why are cattle being mutilated all these years? People always wondered, why are they taking the sex organs and like the weirdest parts of the cow? It's not like a wolf eating a cow. The mutilation is they're taking all these certain
Well, some people
sexual
believe that
organs.
might be my lab too, though, with the
Well,
mutilations. Yeah.
it could, and there's some very strong belief in that it's co-op. So in other words, the military at least is working with one or more of these races.
Yes.
And it's an agreement.
Right.
So they're like, okay, listen, you can do this to our people. You give us technology in return, and we'll both benefit from the research. So because people have seen men in military, they not only see alien greys or reptilians or
they're seeing
whatever
humanoids as well.
They're seeing humans in military uniforms. So that's a big part of it. So with all this, right? So we're throwing all of this at people. But it's all real. It's all true. It's all what people have experienced, and it's very, very emotional and very real. So what is it?
Right.
You know?
Right. I'm on the fence because there is a strong belief that my lab has a hand in a lot of this as well, like taking their own people. Because when I look at, for example, some of the techniques used, like putting big needles through your belly button, which is something we do here today, I would personally think that they would be more advanced. But maybe in my mind is with Star Trek. There we go. It's done. Maybe I'm way too far ahead of myself in my mind with what I think it should be like. I just find some of the techniques very primitive. So that's how I'm thinking, okay, could it be them? Could it be, like you say, a blend? I don't know. But I know that it's something very real that's happening because people are traumatized. And yet some people, which brings me just to one question that Dolly actually had when we go back for a quick minute, just before we get too far ahead. I thought this was a great question. How many of these people considered this not to be an abduction? Like going back to this agreement, did you interview anyone that went, yeah, we made an agreement. I agreed to this. This isn't an abduction for me. I agreed to this. Or is this something that came after where they realized, no, because it's intrusive. Did you find anybody who was pretty nonchalant about this?
Yeah, it's very intrusive and very harrowing and very traumatic. And again, it's only well after the fact that some people come to terms with it. And if they go through a spiritual transformation because of it.
Right.
And they maybe get regressed a couple of times, and maybe they learn or they become more aware of the fact that this was meant to happen. That before I reincarnated into this body, I agreed this was an agreement. Just like soul groups agree to do certain things or try to do certain things in a lifetime, which I believe is true. And so, but the question becomes, okay, if that's fine. But normally when it's first happening, they have no clue, so people are just mortified.
Right.
They think they're losing their minds. It's got to be the worst thing, one of the worst things in the world to experience when you're going through it.
Right. A two-part question. How many of these women had medical proof? Like with respect to, seeing a doctor. And then I can give you a little short story after that one, after the question.
Yeah. So a lot of times it's because it all takes place usually within the first trimester. So for example, was like, woke up, knew I was pregnant. And then if they went to the doctor and were pregnant, but then by the time, that's why the doctors are always like, well, you had a miscarriage. and there were all the
Right.
signs of a kind of a miscarriage, and you absorb the fetus, which your body does.
Right.
And I don't blame doctors for saying this, because does happen.
And how are they going to know any different? You're going to throw something really far out there. It's
Right.
like,
Yeah, exactly.
what?
Right. So all they're
Right.
seeing are is what's the aftermath, if you will,
Right.
of, okay, you're not pregnant anymore, and there's okay, it looks like, yeah,
Right.
it didn't work out for you.
Right.
And some doctors, though, because we talked to some women who were like, well, the doctor was in the doctor's office was like, that's not normal. What happened to you? Something happened to you. What happened to you? And the doctor would be like, what happened to you? Because what I'm seeing here makes no sense whatsoever. But you'll never get a doctor,
Right.
to a working physician,
Right.
right, who's still a physician to
Right.
come
Right.
on camera and say that. So, I mean,
Right.
certainly doctors like Dr. Lear, who's taking implants out of people's bodies, and that's what he does. But this is something that your gynecologist isn't going to come on camera and talk about it.
Right. I work with many, last 20 years, I've worked with a lot of different families and areas of high strangeness and paranormal, and at least half of them had extraterrestrial contact as well. In one case, obviously, I can't say who, but I know she won't mind me saying this much because she does want people to be educated. But she spent most of her adult life thinking she could not get pregnant, and she adopted a child. And the doctor basically looked at her upon examination and said, "You've had many children." She's like, "What?" He goes, "No." He goes, "You have all the scar tissue. Like, you have everything here. Like, you have definitely had children." And she's, of course, a contactee as well. So I think there are some signs, for sure. Miscarriages, you think you'd find something. It absorbs, but it's one heck of a mess without being graphic. I mean, you miscarry, you were going to know you miscarried, right? So
Right.
I don't know, but question coming back. Heather, hi, Heather. Can ETs look like regular people walking among us? Like hybrids. Let's get into the hybrids. They could just look like maybe me or Dolly. So she's a hybrid. So
Yeah. Sometimes think Heather's a hybrid.
yeah.
Hi, Heather. Yeah. So, listen, and I notice here what she's saying too is a really great point, and that's something we wanted to do in this film, is get rid of the stigma. You know what I mean? We wanted people to watch this and know they weren't alone.
Right.
And we actually have numbers and contact info at the end of the film for support groups, for just this type of thing,
Right.
for regression therapy, for so people can reach out to these people who do this work.
Right.
And they dedicate their lives to doing this work and helping people, to help people.
Right.
So
Right.
if you go to a support group, like any support group, it's going to make you feel better because you're not alone anymore. And then you have someone to talk about,
right.
talk to.
Because that's the hard one. You're not going to find too many support groups that are going to bring that in. And this is in reference to this comment from Heather that says, just for the audio listeners, there would probably be a lot more people talking about abductions if they felt as though they weren't the only one that it happened to. And I do agree. Dolly says, "I have 4 hybrid children. I'm 100% aware and agreed to have them in real time." And she does have proof. So I guess it comes back to one of those things where some people are aware and say, yes, I know I had a family member who basically started off with twins, had one child, and was sort of like there was no proof left of where the second child was after ultrasounds and everything else. But we know in the family that it's a bloodline thing, and there are, we are contactees and experiencers. I mean, even saying abductee isn't something that we really use a whole lot, because I do believe that we agree to do this to a certain point. It just sucks that we're not really allowed to remember it and why they like to mess with us that way. So
Right. There are a lot of nuances to that. And when
Yeah.
we did find that it is multi-generational,
Right.
and that
Yes.
it's not, you know, my mother, my grandmother, they had these
Yes.
strange experiences. So it has to do with the DNA.
Right.
And also found that a lot of these women had military contact. Like, so in other words, they were either in the military, or their fathers were in the military, or their grandfathers and grandmothers were in the military. We
Dolly.
kept finding this out all the
Yeah.
time, all the time. And so
Right.
that begs the question, well, is it that you're being served up on a silver platter because you're in the military, and the military has agreements, so they're within their own, they can
Right.
control it and say, okay, private so and so or sergeant so and so, she has the right DNA. You know, and
Right.
maybe that's not by accident either.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah,
there's
I would think militaries would be more apt to make agreements more so than, let's say, governments per se. I imagine some of them are aware of it, because I mean, let's face it, everybody's disclosing except for one.
well, it's exactly right. It's definitely above black, right? It's dark black projects. I mean,
Yes.
that only need to know, and only certain people know. Presidents do not know.
Right. On the
You know,
need to know basis, and they don't need to know,
and they do
essentially.
not need to know. So, you
Right.
know, and it's like, these are the treaties we have, these are the arrangements we have.
Right.
And I think there's more than one. So I think that when I would ask people that their experience is very real to the way they experienced it. But if
Right.
another person's experience is different, please keep in mind that it could be a different alien race doing this to them. It could be
Right.
my lab experiences are always negative. That's from what we've heard. They're never good. So, you know, it's
True.
because it's the US, it's these.
Well, this is why I ask about, like, some of the primitive technology. Dolly, whose father was military, who was ex-military, knew hybrids exist, and they hunted them down.
Yeah, Dolly, I love what you're saying, and I have a theory, and I want to get back to it. This also ties into what Heather asked about: can they be walking around?
Okay. Yes.
There is a book that I'm going to recommend. That's not my book. It's called Rachel's Eyes. Read it. Get it? Read it. Because
I'm going to write it down right here.
Rachel's Eyes. And here's why. In the 70s, when the ETs, let's say, for example, like anything else, they start doing hybridization experiments. And this may have started thousands of years ago, for some sooner, not as long ago. But certainly, if you look at the modern era of UFOs and UFO sightings and abductions, it really started right after World War II.
Hmm.
So let's take from that time frame forward. In this particular book, they talked about a woman was talking about her daughter, and how her daughter met this girl in college. Her daughter was blind because she had pretty bad diabetes. She wasn't completely blind. It was very hard for her to see very much at all. And she went to this community college in California, I think Central California or Northern California. And she had a roommate, and she got, this roommate was, whatever, given to her, right? Because she was looking for a roommate, and her name was Rachel. So of course she could never really see Rachel, but the mom, when she came to visit, saw Rachel.
Right.
And Rachel basically did not quite look human. So in other words, there was something obviously not 100% human about her. She had huge eyes. She had what I told you, like the hair that was like red and stringy.
Right.
And it was very difficult for her to communicate. She had to have these guys would come once a month and bring her food, and her daughter could not eat that food. You cannot eat it. Don't touch it.
Right.
So she had to have special food brought in by these guys in suits. Right. And it turns out that there was a military, this colonel, who was this Rachel's handler, if you will. Right.
Yes.
And he raised her as she was something to do with she was in a crashed UFO or something. She was from a hybrid experiment or something. So they took her and she lived in an underground base. But what they wanted, she was an experiment. What they wanted to do was teach her from very young to be like, can you fit in? So in the 1970s, think about it, our government working with other ETs, can they fit into society?
My lab, for sure.
Rachel was an experiment.
Right.
But she didn't fit in. In the end, she was too unlike human.
So absolutely. Just in her appearance alone.
Yes. And if you see, so, and I would have loved to have met her, and she was a sweet thing. Mm-hmm. It's the saddest story I've ever read, because what wound up happening is they took her back underground, and because she was no longer useful, apparently some military guys just threw her down a flight of steps, or down a staircase, and killed her. And it was absolutely devastating. Right. And so, but what I think is, over time, it's gotten better and better. So now in the 70s, some of these, they may not have passed for human, but certainly in 2023, 24, they could easily pass as human. And we've been told time and time again that there's tens of thousands, if not more, of them walking around now. And sometimes they live in certain
maybe
communities.
The MyLab version looks a bit awkward, like this poor girl. Maybe actual extraterrestrial versions look like you and me. I really think, like, technology, it's like people, I've had people recount their stories to me, and when they go through hypnosis, and it's almost like a, like a robotic sort of, I saw this, look down, saw a line on the floor here, this. It's just very, very different, almost programmed, whereas people with actual extraterrestrial experiences, it just seems to be everything they see is different. You could just tell that this is an out of this world experience. It's not so like lines on the floor. I mean, you don't have walls aboard some of these crafts, but you have primitive tables, like, the lines again on the floor, primitive doorways. And so I don't know, like, how do you differentiate when you're interviewing somebody who's having these experiences as to what's what? Because I would think with that kind of technology, they are going to look like you and me. I mean, mind you, in 40 years, from the 70s, absolutely somebody would have tweaked it for sure.
Right. Well, it's advancing, right? They're getting better and better at it. It's like anything else.
And adopted toy food as well. Exactly.
So, yeah, I think you have to look at all those factors and consider. It's impossible to know for sure. But like you said, we interviewed the one woman, when you saw the film, she was in the military. She's ex-military. Right. Retired military, and her story was incredible to me, because she was in the military and she knows it was military. She knew, she was like, listen, I was fed to the lions here, and it was so emotional for her. But again, you have to consider that it's not just MyLab, it's not just the Greys. There's other ET races that have programs. And some
reptilians are a big one,
and the reptilian one we know is nefarious, and we heard, and this was something I don't want to believe, but we interviewed Dr. Jacobs, and I believe that was for the third film, but there were people that have done so much years and years of research on this, and some people think it's all about colonization, that they're trying to basically replace us. And because the climate's changing and all that other stuff, they're going to replace us with a superior race of beings, smarter, that more adaptable to what's about to happen to the planet, and huge the intelligence levels through the roof, more intelligent than we are.
But did this not happen? If we think back to the ancient Sumerian kings and the Anunnaki, there's that missing link where, there's like Neanderthal, and then there's like, bam, here we are. Right. Do you think maybe it's that sort of an idea? Like there's this big transition somewhere we're just going to jump over.
Yeah, we hear about it for so long. It's like, oh, I want it to happen already. Not if it's a really bad thing, but like, it's hard to say. Is it good for us? Is this part of the next step in our evolution? Do these hybrids allow us to become galactic citizens finally, and for there to be full 100% disclosure, or are they're going to replace us? And I'm not saying either one is true or not true. I don't know. There's no way to know. And it's difficult because it's not only so now, not only is it emotionally, personally for all these people, but as a human race, we're like, what's going on here? Why is this happening? Right. So it becomes really, there's probably not many more important topics to discuss.
Right. Wayne says, might not be a bad idea given the state of the world that we humans have managed to ruin. Maybe, I mean, I don't know. Is it just to build us better with respects to, I mean, not just upgrading us, but enlightening us, evolving us somehow.
That is something that, and they would lead us. So in other words, the hybrids that they're creating, they're not going to replace us, but they would help us all transition into the next phase of our evolution. And part of what we've seen and heard with some of these hybrid children is that they can phase in and out dimensionally, which is something that obviously we can't do here in our current state. So if ETs are advanced, not only advanced beings, but also higher dimensional beings, then maybe these hybrids have all the, see, here's the thing about humans they love, and we've heard this over and over again. They need us for our, obviously our DNA, but they also need us for our, what I call souls. They need us because of our connection to spirit and our connection to the source of everything. I call it God, call it whatever you want. The source of everything that ties everything together in the universe.
Do you not think that there are ETs out there who are probably more connected than us? Like you have the shining ones or you have the light beings. Light beings are just so far out there that they're just completely enlightened beings.
They are, yes.
I just sort of wonder, I mean, I won't say all of them because some of them are they just seem like, I don't know. When you're a destructive race, how can you be connected,
Exactly. And that's what it comes down to. I think of the Arcturians, and they're so advanced and spiritual, or even the Pleiadians. But then I think of the reptilians, and not all reptilians are, there's a faction of reptilians that we've learned, and again, I can't prove this, but that people have talked about where this faction is very lower vibrational. Very much darker. And so there are those races that still want to control, want to destroy, want to rule over others. And I think there's this war going on behind the scenes of the ones that care about us and want us to evolve into these something like the Arcturians or the Pleiadians. And if allowed to, I think we will. But there's also the lower vibrational races, ET races, that do not want that. All they want to do is control everything about us. And I think I think that's part of the problem we have on this planet right now. We're very dense vibrational, lower vibrational. Earth is difficult. It's tough down here.
Yeah.
And I think that some of these, perhaps the reptilians, take advantage of this. They can easily manipulate human minds. Hence,
well, they can also project, are they, people say, well, they shapeshift. I think maybe it's something along the lines of that they can project what they want you to see. Okay, Ed, I'm going to get your comment in one moment because it's a fairly lengthy one and I want to spend time with it. So for just one moment, but Tamara says, what if they deposited us here and then they can move us somewhere else? I don't know. A lot of people think this is like total school or jail.
Well, what was the movie?
A zoo.
Not the recent, but they had, obviously the Alien series, and then it was Prometheus.
Right. Yes.
So in Prometheus, at the beginning of Prometheus, It's exactly what they're doing. And he has that vial, he drinks it,
Yes.
his body falls into the river, and it's all genetic mutation. Everything he
Yes.
basically deconstructs, right? So it's like, what are they creating? What are they trying to create?
Right.
So yeah, maybe they all along they've been preparing us to get. We could be
Mhm.
one big experiment, which is so hard for all of us to accept, and that's cognitive
Well,
dissonance, right? We
how
don't
many
want to
people say
believe
we
that,
live in a matrix and this is all created for us?
right?
I mean, I don't know. Okay, Ed. Now I'm going to back up a minute because Ed had made some comments earlier. He was talking about a show, Baby Lab, Ecto Lab in Japan, starting 2025, growing babies. Okay, I just wanted to get that before we come into this one. It's a big one. Okay, so to back up what y'all are talking about, they have created a lab in Japan that is to rectify the defects in our genetics, grow babies from a time of 9 months. So at fertile through to 9 months in incubators, allowing the parents to see the growth of their cell phones. Japan's always like ahead of the game with some of their little techie stuff like that. They can choose the genetics of the babies, eyes, ears, height, weight, and can zero out defects in the genetics. So then he continues on. Yeah, so he agrees with you. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? You want me to put it back up for you there?
That's a great comment, and that's what I'm saying. We already have the technology and the wherewithal to do these things. So think about what they're doing behind the scenes. And what I mean by that is not out in the public, that we don't know about this lab, right? Or we know about this lab, or we
Mhm.
know about I was just looking online. It's a company. It's this huge, it's a research organization, all
Mhm.
PhDs, and they're going to bring back the mammoth. And this is
Right.
what they're doing. And it's beautiful because they're saying that the mammoth actually will help global warming. Bringing back the mammoth will make a big difference in helping to stop global warming and reverse things. And to some of these animals that are missing, that
Mhm.
are extinct, really were
Put them
helpful with
back.
that. It's
Yeah.
amazing, just absolutely fascinating.
I
And
love science. I'm all about like this sort of technology as long as it's not, manhandled, so to speak. Chris says Earth is the bottom of the basement in the cosmic scheme of things. We are heavy physical beings. Our journey is learning at the base level, and you are not wrong. Um, it says, look at what this is. This started 70 years ago. Kind of scary that genetics have returned. Yeah. Not wrong. I mean, it's scary and I mean, how long have 70 years? I think I mean, if ET's been doing that, we know ET has been following bloodlines. I know mine is one of them, 100%. I've got all kinds of stories that go back in my family. But we know this is been talked about for decades. So we know that they're doing this. It's a matter of when did my lab step in? I'm thinking more along the lines since the war, since, engineering, knowing what the Nazis have been doing, bringing over their scientists, things like that. It's not necessarily back engineering. Maybe it is just technology taken from the Nazi regime back in the day. I think that's very possibly a thing. And I would love that, Ed. Thank you. Um, Do you think we're living in the age of Kali Yuga, an age of blackness, the last age of the cycle of existence that talks about Hinduism?
yeah, from a spiritual standpoint, there's a lot to be said here because it is all part of that evolution, and it's part of our spiritual evolution. Because I agree with that. We are in a very dense, dark. We come here to learn, and it's a very, very, very difficult classroom. Look at it that way. You're in a classroom, you're learning, and it's ridiculously tough,
Right.
because humans by nature are so flawed. And then we're living in this dense. Then you have our dense brains and our egos that
Yes.
go against our what our higher self, our spirits would do. So we're constantly fighting in our own heads. Do we do the right thing? Do we do the wrong thing? And a lot of times humans just do the wrong thing
Hmm.
because of ego, right? Because of greed, because of money, because of, whatever, for whatever reason. So it's incredibly difficult to always do the right thing. It's very hard, and I do agree with that. And I think part of all of this, it all ties into that, because is there that next step? Is our vibration going to be raised as a race, as an entirety on Earth, where the entire vibration of the planet is about to be raised into the age of Aquarius?
Right.
There's a little bit of a higher dimensional thing there. And are some of us being stepped up? Are some of us being, amped up a little bit, right? To be able to help with that transition. And are some of these hybrids there for that? But I think in the end, it all comes down to intent. It's like with anything else. We have the My Lab, and whether My Lab's just military, or I think they have to have help from ETs even to do that, because they're still taking you at the middle of the night through walls and bringing you back. It's hard for me. Like, I can't just imagine the military. They need help, and it's like, okay, help us get these people here. And then we'll do some experiments with you, and then we can figure it out. Like, that's what I see happening.
Right.
But it's all about intent. If the intent is to colonize, then that's bad. If the intent is to raise the vibration of everyone on the planet, then it's good.
Yes. I agree. It says we're already doing this while Hitler was. Okay, well, Hitler was. Western State Mental Asylum in Staunton, Virginia. Dr. Desrochers was with or alongside Hitler here in the U.S. That's interesting. A lot of theories with that. That's a whole other show in itself. I think, Jack, we need to write a book about that.
No, listen, there's the Hitler connection, Nazi Germany, the things they were doing. Right. That was like Frankenstein stuff. Right. Because it was all nefarious. The intent there was never good at any point in time. So whatever they were doing with their mind control, whatever they were doing with propaganda, whatever they were doing experiments genetically with, whatever they were working on, whatever they were trying to back engineer, was all for nefarious purposes. Right. So that's why when we won the war, and they lost the war, we got a lot of those. Us and the Russians were fighting to get those scientists here. And it's not just the rocket scientists. People don't realize a lot of the CIA's MK Ultra guys, they were Nazis.
Yes. Oh, yes. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we had someone on the show talk about that. It's very interesting, everything that she had went through. And yes, continues today by all governments. Project Paperclip. Yes.
Good old Paperclip, Alan Dulles, who was in charge of that. And let me tell you, that goes back to Killing Kennedy, my book. Right. Because that's all about people like Alan Dulles, John Foster Dulles, the Bush family, Prescott Bush, all these skull and bones guys. They loved fascism. They preferred the Nazis. That's why they were glad to have communism be the enemy. And they took as many Nazis, they helped as many Nazis as they could escape. It wasn't just Werner von Braun. Right. And people need to understand, like Nazi war criminals, they helped escape. Right. So that you guys had to go check out the first show that Jack did with us, and we talk a lot about all of this. It wasn't just so much just the Kennedy thing. So go seek it out. I'll actually feature it on YouTube so you guys could find it very easily, because it was like a fantastic segment as well. So getting back then to interviewing these people, are some of these people still, like, is this still happening to them even today? A lot of people are lifetime abductees.
Yes.
And or there's a period of time. And that could be, and this is one of the trends in this, is that when women are fertile.
Yes.
They could start being abducted and being prepared at an incredibly young age. Like, they could be being abducted at 6 years old just to start collecting their DNA. Then when they're fertile later on, and not to freak people out. So when they're 18 and older, from the ET standpoint. Then all of a sudden these false pregnancies start, and then they continue, and then eventually they're visiting their kids, and their kids are 10 years old, 12 years old, 15 years old, and then it stops. Now there might be communication with some people, and it's like I still speak to them. When I meditate, I can do it. They still take me and they show me stuff. Absolutely, depending on, I think, which hybridization program they're part of. So so yeah, it tends to be during that fertile, when that most fertile period for women, and same for men. When they're fairly young and good health, and
like super sperm, basically. Yeah.
Basically, yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Yes. Backtracking a minute, says my dad said we didn't win the war, that Nazis in the long run may have actually achieved their agenda. I agree.
I agree as well. A real quick point on that. I love Ed's comments.
I know.
And because I listen, the Fourth Reich exists. It's just in the cover of darkness. They did achieve a lot of their agenda, because we in our country right now, we're fighting to keep democracy alive.
Right.
And I don't know what's going to happen, but there are a lot of fascists out there that, and they gained a foothold in South America. They were an insidious bunch that did not go away easily. And because we had a lot here in the United States who believed in fascism and preferred it.
Right. Everybody, the powerful people don't want to give up their power.
No.
But they want to keep it going as long as possible. Dolly said her last hybrid was at 58 years. Wow. Dads are a champion, Dolly. Good Lord.
I would say, did you ever see your hybrids?
Yeah, all over the world. Yeah. Dolly, do you ever see your hybrids? I know, Dolly. I already know the answer.
Oh, you do already. Sorry. She says yes.
Right. She says yes. Yes. So maybe you can explain, Dolly, just put it in a comment, how they're doing. What happens after a certain time when you stop? Do you stop seeing them, or what is in store for them? Where do they go on to do? Because there's a lot of people out there who never get past a certain point. Maybe because they're not aware, maybe because they don't want the relationship, or maybe they're just not allowed to know because their journey with this child is complete. So if you could jot that down, and we can put it up, that would be outstanding.
Yeah.
Ed, my father was. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to add to that and say,
a
lot of times when the moms are on these ships and they meet their hybrid children, their maternal instinct kicks right in. And there's such a strong sense of love and it's incredibly emotional, and they always cry. They're crying because they can't be with them forever. It's just a short period of time. And a lot of times, because these children are hybrid, they don't have the emotional capacity that we do. So they're more like, okay.
Right.
Not that they don't, it helps them apparently, but they're not as emotional about it. They're like, okay,
right.
Mom.
They're very logical.
Right.
Like Spock. Yeah.
Like Spock. So, totally.
She goes, my first at 17 years is when she had him. He's a healer and medical. So, okay, could we back up? Are they medical healer on the ships, or are they here on good old planet Earth, or maybe another planet? At 24, he's an engineer. Okay.
Oh, so they're earthbound. They're earthbound hybrids.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think more along the line, like you never know who you are, talking to. Maybe you're talking to a hybrid and you just don't know it. My third was at 54 years. She is still young. Very nice. Yeah, still young. So not career-based. So she would still be on the ships then, Dolly, or is she being raised by a regular family? Just curious to see, like, are they earthbound or are they off on a ship working? So, okay. And so get back to Ed. My father was Army Corps Intel officer. So I just want everyone to know I'm not just saying words. Well, I know you as well, Ed, and I know you just don't spew that stuff.
Ed's nailing it. I can confirm he's nailing it.
Yes. He helps on the gray homework and here. Homework or home world.
World. Okay.
Okay. And she is on planet Orion system.
The Greys in the Orion system.
Right.
So, and that's the big thing. Because there's different types of hybrids, and that's the thing that always confused me, and I couldn't get much. Not that part wasn't completely clarified for me after we made this film, because I couldn't determine. There's hybrids that they go through the process I talked about. They stay on ship, and then they either go to their home planet or somewhere where they're not seen, and they continue to do their work, whatever that work might be. And then there's what you would call the earthbound hybrids, where people have children and you could just tell they're kind of hybrids.
Right.
And that brings in something that's another topic altogether. What does it mean to be autistic, or to have Asperger's, or to be is it all of a sudden now like this everyone, there's not an epidemic, but
Right.
they're different. They think differently. They're not lesser. They're for the most part, way smarter than people who aren't autistic. They just think more differently.
Right.
So this one woman wrote a whole book about it.
Right.
And is it the new human? Is this the new human we're talking about? And is this part of the hybridization?
Right. Well, I tend to agree with respects to people with autism or even Downs. I truly believe that they are just brilliant. I have a niece with autism, and she's brilliant. Her mind works differently, but she gets it, and she's so gifted. She'll just sit there and look at me and say, what's this? Who's this person? Or, okay, who's growling right now? And I'm just like, growling? She goes, yes, I hear somebody growling. I was like, damn it. What got in the house? I don't know. But the thing is like she just picks up on littlest things, and with such pure intention. But she's brilliant. It's just, I think the brain just works so fast, and we're the ones that have a hard time keeping up.
Yeah, I agree. I think we have to label everything, and we have to put everything in its right box. But in the end,
Right.
they're special,
Right.
and they should be treated as such. And it's only because we're not caught up to them that they're the ones who have to kind of be suffer and be annoyed in the world we live in.
Right.
They must be looking at us like, man, why don't they see it? Like, how come they can't think the way I think?
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
Listen, that we can't. I'm not saying that that's 100% the case. I just think that there's things
it's a theory.
we need to look at.
Right. Hello. I heard from someone in the past who worked at a restaurant and was a waiter and was freaked out because he saw people who didn't even know how to use cutlery. Maybe they were just in training. So socialize them on planet Earth. Ed says, my worries are that this new generation born without sympathy and empathy. Oh, maybe that's the point. Makes for better rulers.
More pragmatic, practical.
Very possible. Very possible. You get to that point where it's still happening all over the place. I mean, I can't tell you how many people I have worked with over the years who have had these exact concerns with contact, and who have said to me, "Oh no, I know I have been, on ship. I know I have had children," and they just it's like they're curious, but they seem so disconnected. Maybe it's different when they actually see them, but I imagine it is a huge sense of loss when that time comes where they just can no longer see them. It's almost cruel in a way, because it's like, no, it's done now. You've seen your child, but now your job here is done, and now they will, you're never going to see them again. Or if you're lucky, maybe you will catch a glimpse of them, or they'll visit as young adults. But when you read stories about that, again, it seems like the child, now the adult, or they're just disconnected from the human parent. They've
Right.
evolved past it.
Right. Right. And again, because they're hybrid, it's not as emotional. But for the moms, for the human moms, it's incredibly difficult. Incredibly difficult. And you saw that come out in the film when we interviewed, when we asked them, I said, when you saw your child. And there was one, when she was shown her child in a cave.
Right.
They actually came down, brought her. It was in Missouri, outside Missouri in the Ozarks somewhere, and there was a cave, and they brought her daughter down, and
Right.
there's actually a illustration of that,
Right.
and she had this contact, and that, I'm not sure if that's so, I can't remember exactly, but one of them where the child was like, didn't want to be there. It's like, what am I doing here? And the ET's like, you're here to meet your biological mother, and so
Mm.
do it. And then she seemed annoyed at first, and then the mom was like, oh my god, but the mom felt all this love,
Mhm.
and then the child wasn't really feeling it the same way, and
Mhm.
that's like the stuff that, whatever they're doing, there's some collateral damage here that needs to be discussed, and that's why, like, I get that some people, and it's love and light, and I get that, I totally do, but
Mhm.
it's not the same experience for everyone.
Right.
If you're capable of saying, I agree to this, I'm good, this has changed my life for the better, that's great. But I can tell you right now, there are people who have suffered immensely, who have committed suicide, who cannot handle this.
Right.
So that's why for me, it's like, well, there's something there's something fundamentally wrong with abduction against
Mm.
one's will.
Very
And
intrusive.
it's incredibly intrusive, and it and
Mhm.
it it, it totally destroys your paradigm
Mm.
of everything that you thought was real is now no longer real, and there's a
Mhm.
new reality that you're faced with, that 99.9% of the human population is going to make fun of you if you bring it up.
Right. Right.
So I refuse to buy into it's all love and light, because that's not all good. It's just not all good.
Right.
And so it's like you have to be held accountable. It's like
Mhm.
a means to an end, right? If it's any means to an end, that's not right. But and so if they might be thinking, well, totally logically, like, we're doing this is why we're doing it, it's all for the good. Yeah, but you're destroying people's lives in the process.
Right.
Not maybe everyone, but a lot of people suffer mightily because they're
Mhm.
being abducted against their will, that they
Mhm.
know of,
Right.
and they're going through this horrific experience.
Right. It is really difficult. We interviewed a young man on the show last year, and he realized he was a MyLab abductee,
Mhm.
and he had just so many horrific experiences. And now he's an advocate. Like, he wants to talk about it, but it's like he said, it has damaged him so much. And whether, I mean, it's hard when it's your own people. That makes it that's even worse. But when you're looking at ET, there is something to be said. Like, I mean, I've been in experience since I was a child, and those memories started resurfacing more as an adult. But it is intrusive. When you are home in your bed at night, you're supposed to feel safe. And when you're being taken out against your will, it's that doesn't leave you. And I think it would be easier for people if if they could basically call the shots on that and say, "Okay, I'm okay with it." Now, I've come to learn that you really can, if they're kind, and they are with me, and I'm just like, "No, I'm not, I don't wanna do that right now. Just let me fall asleep, then I don't care. But just let me believe at least that I fell asleep and I had a great night's sleep." And I wake up exhausted, so I know I've been somewhere. But the thing is they are respectful, and they do, just leave when I don't want them to be there. And I mean, I've woken up at times with hands on my head, like I know we're exchanging information of some sort, And I'm okay with that. But I wasn't the first time. I think I might have said something like, touch me and I'll break your arm. Because I was just like, and but then those hands just disappeared. And then it was just like, okay, I'm okay with that. But the next time when I felt them on my head, I was like, okay, I understand what's happening. You're just taking information, or you're giving information. And I would get downloads and started realizing just how important the information I was getting was. And a lot of it was just pertaining to my own journey, but I was grateful to have it. So have I had hybrid children? I couldn't tell you, because that's not something I have a recollection of. And maybe I chose that. Maybe we're the ones who say, I don't want to remember. You know, maybe it's
Right.
to protect us, depending, if you're looking at somebody who may be potentially at risk.
It seems like it's to protect that the whatever kind of memory block they use is, it seems as that's a protection. That's to protect people so they don't remember anything.
Hmm.
But it doesn't work
Hmm.
100% because people always have memories that come through, and they have nightmares when they're subconscious, when they're dreaming. And then if they get regressed,
Hmm.
but by being regressed and coming to terms with it, I think is when you can get past it. The only what do they say? The only way to get past your fears is to go through your fears, right? And
Hmm.
instead of around it, you can't go around your fears. So
Right.
you have to face it. And I think that's what some of these clinicians and the people that dedicated themselves to having these support groups and doing regression therapy on people who have been abducted, they deserve a lot of credit.
Right.
And they're in the film. And
Right.
we provide information to help people to deal with this,
Hmm.
because it is something that needs to be dealt with, and
Right.
more than anything, to know they're not alone. That's the key.
Right. And how does one decide, okay, we're going to do this film? How does one find people willing to come forward?
How did we do that?
Yeah. How did you, because the people in your film are, you could see, like, some of them are just like, oh yeah, this is, an experience that's happened to me, and I got to meet my child. Then you have others who, I mean, they're breaking down. So it takes a lot for them to come forward, knowing full well that this is going to go international.
Yeah, a couple things there. I think first of all, we talked to a lot of we didn't only talk to the people that are on film, on camera.
Right.
We talked to a lot of people that talked to us
Mm.
but didn't want to go on camera.
Oh, interesting.
So that's why we
Interesting.
knew so much about so many women and men as well, but it was just too much. And a lot of times it was like, listen, my community, I'm a member of the church, there's no way I can do this.
Mm.
And as filmmakers, you want to try to avoid the whole mafia thing where you darken their
Yes.
voice and their face, but that's okay. I think every once in a while, absolutely, because that's just saying they're talking, but they don't want to be seen. So, and I get that. And one woman was, she was in city council or whatever it was, or
Right.
just that their husbands would divorce them, which is horrifying because
It
that's like, wow,
is.
real supportive spouse you got there.
Right.
So, and a lot of times it was religious. So you have religion come into it and they think it's the devil, and then you got a problem.
Hmm.
And they're bringing exorcists over to your house. So you got to
Right.
be real people. I get it. We got that. But what we take pride in as filmmakers and as documentarians is that our reputation is that we are going to honor your story. We're not
Hmm.
going to make you look foolish. We're not going to, we're here for you to tell your story, and for us we're here to honor your story, and hopefully your story helps other people, and
Hmm.
and they know that it's going to help other people, and in the end what they see on the screen is, thank you for portraying me the way you did, because I don't look like a complete lunatic.
Right.
And it's like, we're not about that. That's not why we do what we do. And
Hmm.
it's very important. In fact, you have to, being face to face with someone who is either in the military or not in the military and is telling you these experiences, and
Hmm.
they're crying and they're breaking
Yeah.
down, that says a lot.
Mm.
And unless you experience that, a lot of us, it's hard because as humans we tend to be, if it doesn't happen to me, it doesn't exist.
Right.
If I don't see a ghost, ghosts don't exist.
Right.
If I don't
Right.
see a UFO,
Right.
UFOs don't exist. That's nonsense. That's closed-minded.
Right.
That's why we're still in the dark ages in many ways.
I
You know,
agree. I agree with you on that. And I think we are in an age of this. I mean, like I say, most of the world's disclosing. Everybody pretty much has a camera phone. People are capturing all kinds of things. Things are going on. And I think it's good to be, to have a clear mind about the possibility that we're not alone. And we don't want to think about it's hard enough for some people, for example, to believe that, okay, yes, there are extraterrestrials here. Well, I mean, there's terrestrial beings that have been here long before us. There's proof of that with out of place artifacts and ancient sites and things are surfacing. There's so much underwater, that's just been swallowed up. I mean, God, we've got like at least two continents that we know where they are. We know the civilizations there. So there are a lot of different areas that show that ET has been here. And ancient cultures work with people from the stars, and you look at those from like the Hopi, for example. We're like, no, they're underground. There's the reptilian people have even helped. There's history of the people of Peru and Brazil where they were helped through cataclysmic events, helped by reptilians who took them underground and educated them and helped them to survive and evolve. And so there are phenomenal stories about this through ancient times. And for people of faith, they have to look at things like the Book of Enoch or Ezekiel's wheel or Da Vinci himself, who went missing for 2 darn weeks, came back even more brilliant than he normally was. So,
yeah.
Something. He went to a cave. This happened in a cave. So did he go through a portal or did he come across an ancient civilization? We've talked to people who've been on the show who've claimed, that to have spoken to people who went on hikes, went into a mountain, and one just went through a portal and they've met blue avians. It's like there's so many ways. This planet is an incredible thing. It's an incredible place. It's a living thing.
It
There are
is.
portals everywhere. Who's to say? I mean, maybe we're the strangers here.
How did we become so closed-minded as a race of people, as a human race? How did we become so horribly closed-minded? Not all of us, but think about it, generally
Mm,
speaking. There are
right,
very few parties I can talk to this with people about. Like I have to really know my audience before
right.
I talk about this. and
Yes,
in most mainstream circles, no way.
it's true. And what's sad is that, again, you can go back into our ancient past and look at ancient people from all different parts of the world. They emulated what they saw. Look at petroglyphs, hieroglyphs. Just look at monuments, ancient monuments and structures, and the pyramids, and they would build over power spots. Like, I mean, there are stargates. You can see them carved in stone on the side of a mountain. Go to South America. There's all kinds of them. Like, the thing is like when you say when did it happen? I don't know. Did it happen during Roswell? Did it happen after, like in the 40s? Seems to be a really big turning point somewhere
Yeah.
in there.
I think it's because we dropped the bomb.
Yeah,
That
that caused a
nuclear
ripple effect
it,
dimensionally,
it
right?
caused a ripple effect, and it really got their attention. Like, okay, they're about to destroy not only their own planet, but possibly have effects across the galaxy or universe or however that works. That
Right,
could have been interdimensionally. Could be wormholes that it affects, and it affects
right,
their travel routes.
right,
So they listen. Think about what happened after that, in the 40s and 50s and 60s during the Cold War, where all of these nuclear missile sites were being monitored by UFOs, and the missiles were being like they were affecting the missiles. So these UFOs would show up. They would
mm,
make the missiles inoperable,
right, right.
and
Yes,
as if to tell us, you're not going to destroy your planet. Earth is too important. So
right,
grow up.
right,
And I honestly, I'm a human being, but I'm the first one to say we need to grow up.
right. I always say we don't play well in the sandbox with
Oh,
others.
terrible. I mean, Michelle, honestly, you can do an entire show on how human nature ties in all this. We talked about that with Kennedy.
Yes.
Like who would do such a thing? Why are men, and I say men because with that it was all men. It's usually all men. And why are they so horrible? What is we've been treating each other horrifically
Mm.
since the beginning of mankind.
Not wrong. And if you think about it, pre-religion per se, I mean, I think maybe Christian religion, but it's one of the newer religions. When you're getting into the ancient ones, a lot of them believed in the goddess. And women are just so much more, yes, shouldn't fear the divine feminine. Exactly.
Yes.
See, that's what it was. We're emotional, nurturing creatures, females. And women are, Mars and Venus, and they're the hunter gatherers, and they're the protectors, and they're the controllers, and religion.
If you think about the true message of Jesus, if you go back, let's forget what religion you believe in, et cetera, et cetera. If you go down to the basics of what what Jesus Christ was trying to teach, it was very simple, very simple. It was about love,
Right.
and there was really nothing, and understanding and having empathy. All these,
Yes.
that's it. All it was. It was when, and so when he died, that's when, and Mary Magdalene was a major part of his ministry.
Yes.
And I believe, probably upset some people, but she was most definitely his wife.
Right.
So let's make that very clear here. She was not a prostitute.
No. Well, even the church has come out and said, no, that was false information.
Yeah.
They vindicated her that way. She came from a very well-to-do family, and so did he.
Royalty. They were royalty.
They
People
were,
don't
and
realize
so
that.
Mary's family was royalty, and so is Jesus's family royalty when it comes back from David. I mean, it only made sense that two royal houses would somehow come together. But people have their beliefs, and I think that's it should be. We should all have our beliefs. We should all draw inner strength from something that gives us, peace, that empowers us. But it's so important not to lose ourselves in an institution of any sort. It's important that we hold on to that childlike mentality of wonderment, of just looking at something and going, what if? What if it's true? What if? Wouldn't it be wonderful? I think we've just been taught to fear what we don't see, what we can't explain, or no one has seen a creator. No one has seen source, but we believe it's there. We know that there's something there, that there's something greater. Source,
The ancients were so much more connected to spirit and source than we are now. We're so disconnected, and that's why so many of us suffer from depression, anxiety, these other things, because we are disconnected. We're disconnected from each other. We're disconnected from source. We're disconnected from Mother Earth,
right?
Which is a living, breathing thing.
Right.
The earliest Christian religion, or the people that followed Jesus's ministry, the Cathars. Think about that.
Yes,
going back
which
to
came
France.
from the Essenes.
Correct.
And who were the Essenes, Jack? Who were the Essenes? Stemmed from the Gnostics, but the Essenes, Jesus, Mary Magdalene, Mother Mary, her mother Anna.
Right. And the women had even more prominent roles in their society than men did. And it was all about balance, yin yang. Divine feminine was incredibly important.
Yes.
And Earth was part of that. Mother Earth was part of that.
Sophia.
Right. And what did the Catholic Church do to the Cathars? They wiped them out.
Yes.
I mean, we're getting off. I don't mean to get off topic. I'm sorry.
No, but it's true. It's true. I mean, we have to go back. I mean, it all stems from Gnosticism. The Knights Templars were Gnostics. Why? They're the keepers of knowledge. Because they also had an understanding of the stars. Many ancient cultures had an understanding of the stars and star beings and constellations, archons, things like that. Like, they understood that there was danger up there as much as there was wonderment. And I think it's important to remember that Gnosticism was. I mean, people call it a religion. I don't know that it was a religion. I think it was really just a way of life, much like Druidism and paganism, and and a lot of these ancient ways just sort of got swallowed up, and it's like anything, in all fairness, whether it's a religion or whether it's an invading army. You invade an area and you take the good parts and you blend it in with your own to make the people that you're conquering feel more comfortable, and you just tweak it a little bit. So it's a bit of everything. But the church did keep the best of everything, and there's so much knowledge that has been kept from us. And what they didn't take, they burned. The Library of Alexandria.
Right.
Do you know how much information was stored in those books and how much of it disappeared, and then how much of it just got burned so nobody could see it?
Horrible. Right.
So strange.
And
Wise
when you
men.
think about the ancient mystery schools, I want to do a documentary on that so badly, because I think everything stems from the ancient mystery schools. And you go back to King Solomon,
Yeah.
and his teachings. And there were 7 mystery schools in the time of Jesus. And what did Jesus, the lost years of Jesus, when he was supposedly, what happened?
Mystery schools.
His born and he was crucified, and started his ministry shortly before he was crucified. Not too long after that, he was crucified. What happened all those years, the lost years of Jesus? He was going to all these mystery schools, and you have to be invited to mystery schools. Back then, you had to be invited. And how were you invited? You were royal. You had to have royalty. And he was from the bloodline of King David, King Solomon. So he was invited to go to all these mystery schools. That's why he knew so much. And someone asked the question, what is Gnostic or Gnosticism?
Hold on, there it is. Yes.
It's related to knowledge. It's anything to do with knowledge. Mm-hmm. So it's knowledge is power. Basically, it's trying to understand and learn things.
The group of people.
Exactly right.
And out of them came the Essenes and the Cathars. And I've spent time, a little bit of time in the south of France, and I visited.
Oh, have you really?
I'm a world traveler. I love it. And
that is my dream. I want to do the whole Holy Blood, Holy Grail.
It's very fascinating. I can connect you with people. In fact, there's going to be Hamilton White, who is the owner of the Tomar Hoard, and he also has the full which collection did he just buy? I'm just having a brain shoot. The man who wrote, one of the writers of Holy Blood, Holy Grail. I'm a total brain shoot right now, but he bought the whole collection. So the Saunière Society is having an event at the beginning of June, and you get to go and see a lot of these places, and you get to let's just say see Rennes-le-Château in a whole other way. But it's a whole other thing. When I was there, even the cemetery was just all cordoned off. You couldn't get to it. It's just so
really?
People have just caused damage, but it's an incredible place. You have to visit Carcassonne, the holy city, which is where 20,000 Cathars were murdered. It's a whole lot of its history. And the Monseigneur, of course, Bougarache. You want to go to a place with portals and aliens?
Really?
I have a friend who does tours there all summer long.
We need to talk about that. And that's I love that you're so into that. I just feel like if you want to really understand what happened, I think right after those 200 years or so after Jesus died, and what happened, what was really going on. Why was Mary Magdalene so revered in that area, where most of the churches they worship her?
Well, most of the churches were built by Templars, and Templars did worship her. So when you're looking at this woman, it was not the Holy Mother; it was Mary Magdalene.
Yeah.
So they built to her. So what are the mystery schools, Lady Spiderwitch would like to know?
There's modern mystery schools, which I actually did some work at one, and I wanted to learn the basics, and I did, and it was a wonderful weekend, and it was a really great experience. And it's we'll get back to this, but remember this the power of ritual. Okay, so now I'm gonna go back and I'll come back to that. So ancient mystery schools taught ancient knowledge. So what was this ancient knowledge? Where did it come from?
Mm-hmm.
Right? If King Solomon was teaching it, and he was the wisest of all kings, King Solomon, and that's where the Templars went when they sacked Jerusalem. They took it from the Muslims. They went to the Temple Mount. That was King Solomon's temple. What did they find there? When we talk about things like sacred geometry and alchemy,
Mm-hmm.
these are
It's
some
all about alchemy.
It's all about alchemy. And when
It
people
is.
understand
It
alchemy,
is.
what it is they say, well, it's turning something into gold. Yes, but there's much more than that. It's an energetic thing. It's being able to understand things and be able to, I don't want to say manipulate, but to understand the elements,
Mm-hmm.
and to be able to tap into the energy of that,
Right.
and to create, and it can help with so many things. And that, listen, if you look up alchemy, there's 8 million books on it. The Philosopher's Stone, Nicholas Flamel, you go and go and go and go and go.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the same with sacred geometry. There's a power in
Yes.
sacred geometry.
Yes.
And it's a vibration. It's literally a vibration.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a higher vibrational thing. And when you do things a certain way, that's why the ancients built things the way they did and where
Absolutely.
they did.
And do you know there's information out there that says that Mary Magdalene came from the Sirius star system?
I would believe that. I get emotional when I think about her, because I think people miss the boat on her altogether. And I know that there was a lot of, now there's more of the divine feminine, Mary Magdalene. There's more
a heck
now,
of a
thank
lot.
God. But I still think that her place in the history of the world should be much bigger. And I think about, I feel like, how do I say this? I'm not a religious person when it comes to a particular religion.
Right.
I feel like I have an incredibly personal relationship with what I would call the Christ consciousness.
Right.
And what I'm talking about.
It's
not about going to a church and tithing and obeying all their laws.
I have to connect you with people who
yes, because that's the last thing Jesus wanted.
Yes.
He talked about that. He talked about, like, the worst thing in the world was money.
Mm-hmm.
The worst thing in the world was power.
Mm-hmm.
Right? When he went to the high temple, and
he sacked the market.
He sacked the market.
Yeah.
And let me tell you something. There were no single Jewish guys his age back then. You got married. and Mary
there's a strong belief that the engagement party where he turned water to wine was his own, because back then it was customary back then. And don't shoot the messenger, people. I'm just saying what was customary for people back in that time, not necessarily him, but they wanted to make sure that the woman they were going to marry was fertile. So a lot of times she would be pregnant already, because they wanted to make sure that they could keep their bloodline going. So they wouldn't marry until, they knew at that point, so then they could celebrate. And I love ancient traditions. There's just so much to it all. And I just think people back then were more, I mean, the times are harsh throughout all of our history. Times were harsh. There was just a lot of war. There's just a lot of, like the plagues, and, times were just very, very difficult. There's always been warmongering throughout how many cultures. I believe the indigenous people all around the world are the most connected people. Mm-hmm. And with that being said, you have to pay attention to their oral history. You just have to pay attention, because they are the keepers, I believe, of the true knowledge, whether that goes back to, like our North American indigenous people, the indigenous people, down in, Australia, whether it be the Mayans, whether it be, the Incans, it just goes on really all over the world. All of these people, for the most part, had some kind of ET connection. Indigenous people did, and they talked about it. So we're missing something in there.
Mhm.
We're missing something in there, and we need to try to find that back because I mean, I'll introduce you to a friend of mine who does tours down in the south of France, and he talks a lot about the Christ consciousness and goes to all of these power spots that Mary Magdalene would say, the cave of Bethlehem, where she would stay. This is where she spent the last years of her life, and up on these mountains where they go to, he sent me a photograph of a woman who was there just, looking at something on this power spot, and right behind her was a saucer, right in the middle of the day.
Oh my
We
God.
catch them all the time. I can, my friend Richard Stanley, he's a director of Island Dr. Moreau, the color of change. What is it? I can't remember the name of it. Sorry, Richard. I'm just having a brain toot. But he just tours down there as well.
Right.
And he's just, these are all people who are well connected. And I'll send you the name of a book, even that you may or may not have heard of, with respects to Rennes le Chateau, that you should read. It was Henry Lincoln that my friend Hamilton bought his whole collection
Yes.
after he passed. He's got that. But here is a book that Richard actually told me to get. It was called The Refuge of the Apocalypse: Doorway into Other Dimensions. Rennes le Chateau is the key. Elizabeth Van Buren. I can send that to you.
I would love.
Elizabeth Van Buren.
That would be incredible. And listen, I know this is really might seem off topic, but it's not, because what we're talking about with the ETs is all part of this.
Yes, it is.
And I feel like when we talk about the ancient mystery schools and that knowledge, where's that come from? Well, when you're more connected, if you're more connected spiritually and you're more connected intergalactically, where are you getting your information from? What are you accessing? What did Leonardo da Vinci access?
Seriously, I'll ask. Disappearing in for 2 weeks,
and then he's like drawing submarines and tanks and airplanes. Like, what was he accessing? What knowledge, and where did it come from?
Right.
So, what are we talking about here? And how are the ETs? We don't know yet what our connection to ETs is. If we're already part of this galactic, we have that ET DNA, and we're just part of all of it. It's in our DNA. It's in our very essence. Whether or not, we don't know yet if we're going to become galactic citizens one day, because we don't know if we'll get our, together enough to be allowed into the galactic neighborhood, so to speak. But there, in everything we're talking about, there's an ET element to it. There's an ET presence there. And so when we talk now about hybridization, it's like, Michelle, you said, well, how long has this been going on? Yeah, we can talk about the modern era of UFOs because we know so much more about it. Photos and eyewitness testimony from the 40s forward. But what happened during the Christ time? Where was Mary Magdalene from? Why was Jesus? How can he do all these things?
She was said to have been, if you can find some research, she was said to have been from the Sirius star system. There's even a book that claims that they came from what was called a dragon line. And people automatically sit there and say, dragons, oh, this is evil, it's Satan. No, it was actually knowledge.
Right.
It was actually knowledge. What that was.
Right. We've twisted things today.
Yeah. So you can go in and you can research that part of it. But like Enoch was aboard a ship, and he would allegedly, if you read it and you really read it, you'll see that he was a donor, we'll say donor, to the cause of hybridization. It's out there. So when we say, how far does it go back? Well, read the book of Enoch and you'll see that he was, instrumental in that part of it too. So are we looking at it the wrong way, Jack? Are we looking at it like maybe like we're being victimized because let's face it, if people think it's against their will, you're a victim. But should we look at it maybe as, okay, maybe this is a privilege thing? Are they helping us here? Maybe we're the ones that they want to help evolve. Maybe it has nothing to do with them. I mean, you could be walking among hybrids. Well, I know we're walking among hybrids that look like you and me.
Right. Again, I think that the reason why this is difficult to pinpoint is because there are more than one agendas going on.
Yes.
And if you have more than more than one ET agenda,
Yes.
forget about the human agenda, which there are plenty of those, but the ET agendas, if you're a Pleiadian or you're an Arcturian or you're one of these very highly evolved species,
Hmm.
higher dimensional, higher vibrational, then of course you want to help humanity because you've been past all the other stuff. You're beyond ego, you're beyond control, you're beyond all of that. You understand what it's all about.
Right.
But if you're, and I want to preface this, not all reptilians. There was a point in time I didn't believe in reptilians at all. I just couldn't wrap my head around it.
Right.
And then a couple things happened, and then I was like, oh, okay. and then I learned that it's a faction, one faction of the reptilians that's nasty
Right.
and very lower vibrational. But there are factions of reptilians who are very highly evolved and very, very benevolent. So that's important for us to understand. It's just that the faction that's very lower vibrational and nasty is really nasty. And I can say that because we had a bit of a thing happen because of the stuff we were doing. And there's no other way to describe it other than that there was a bit of contact made. And let's just say I've never experienced such nastiness in my life. And that energy was so negative and horrible that it literally made my skin crawl. It really gave me pause. And I'm a love and light guy. And the reason why we make these documentaries, we want to help people.
You
That's
do.
why we made these documentaries. That's why we do the things we do. So
Right.
for me, to me, it's about love and light. I don't want to get involved in things that are dark and nasty. I would rather let other people do that. We're researching. I get it. We're going to touch some of that stuff. We're going to come into contact
Right.
with some of it, but
Right.
I try to avoid it. So, but every now and again, you come face to face with something and you're like, okay, we have to come to terms with the fact that it's always a fight between good and evil.
Right.
I know that sounds trite, but it's not. I mean, it's a reality.
Right.
And we always have to try to take the high road, be the better.
Mhm.
And one person asked me, how do you deal with these reptilians? It's just, and I say, be better, just be love and light. Don't give in to them. Don't let them control you. It's like a human trying to manipulate you. They're very manipulative.
Well,
So,
more manipulative.
yeah.
I truly believe that we are. I think there are just people on this planet that are just trying to hold on to whatever power that they have, and sometimes that means there's collateral damage. I feel that we don't have control over what's going on, but we have control as to how we handle it. And I truly believe it is important to continue on with our own journey of evolution. We have to continue to evolve because one day our time here will be done. And it's important that our own evolutionary, um, how we treat others, how we basically treat ourselves. I mean, some people are pretty hard on ourselves, but we need to work a lot of that stuff out. And when you find inner peace and you learn how to leave your baggage behind, I think you will evolve and you will transcend someplace even more incredible. The journey continues, and we don't know that the journey doesn't continue with extraterrestrials or terrestrial beings who are already here on another planet. It doesn't mean we always reincarnate here. You have the ability to reincarnate into other places. And maybe that's just, we're this species with amnesia. We really are. I don't think we remember where we come from and where we're going. We just have complete amnesia. We're thrown in this place to say, here, don't tell you where you come from. They don't tell you what you did wrong. They don't tell you what you need to improve on. But you have to remember everything you're doing here is karmic. You're suffering and fighting for some kind of karma somewhere. So the sooner you just work it, I think the sooner that you get to maybe enjoy the ride a little bit more, but just only an open mind. will help you get to that point. And I feel for all of these people you've interviewed. It was heartbreaking for me to watch, yet, you know, I feel like the ones who got it were, but then there's that element of disappointment. It's like, oh, like it's done now for me, but at least I got to be a part of it. So maybe that's the end result. It's just really, you know,
And really, and that's why we made the third one, because we felt like the second one did what it was supposed to do. It laid out, it
right.
documented it. Here you go. Believe it or not, this is what we got. And but that's why we knew we were doing a third one. And I know we're going to talk about that another time. But that kind of brings everything together from the first two.
Right.
And again, we'll talk about that, I know, on the next time. But so I look at it as, yes, it is. It's definitely the most emotional one. And we had a couple of people's like, it was too dark, it was too negative. And I'm like, yeah, but you have to understand, this is what we got.
Right. Right.
And so, but what we have to do is, like you said, well, how are you going to react to it? Let's understand that it's happening, right?
Right.
And what we try to do is for the people who experience it to get that they're not alone. That was the positive note on that, you're not alone. So a lot of people who watch that were like, oh my God, I'm not alone. And that in itself was a very positive thing. And so that's the start. That's a great starting point to be like, okay, listen, sometimes we have to deal with realities that aren't good. And come on, there are a lot of realities that we deal with that aren't very good. So,
no.
And this happens to be one of them that is, at least on the surface, does not look very good.
Right.
But let's, we'll go a little further with it in the next documentary, and we'll try to put all the pieces of it together.
Right.
And that's what that's what we did with the trilogy.
Right. I agree. And I think realistically we're getting there, and it's sad. We all evolve at different, at different speeds. Sometimes not everybody can follow along, and it's very difficult when you have to keep going on your own. But you know what? At this point, I think it's been a terrific show. I think we've really got a lot of fantastic information in, and I'm just so pleased that that you joined me tonight and talked about your film and all of your other beliefs, because I do believe it all comes full circle. It really does. And we're going to be talking about the next show the next time you come on, and that's called I didn't even realize you did Ghost Soldiers of Gettysburg. Okay, there's another show. but we're going to be talking about the revelations. So can you tell us real quick a little bit about that so we know what to expect?
Sure. So, we go through the first two films and we get to that point of, this is happening. This is, people are being abducted. There are experiments going on. There seems to be this hybridization program or programs. The third film talks about why. What's the end game? What are the possibilities? So we taught in that film, we focus on the three main schools of thought on what it could be, and get into an even broader understanding of what's happening today as we speak, with possible disclosure, but to really get into it's like you said, you have to go from A to B to C. You can't go from A to F or A to M, because people, it's very difficult to follow that. So that's what these documentaries do. So we're just finishing at this point. We're putting it all together, and it was my favorite one, personally, because of the interviews we did and the information we obtained, and it really ties everything together. And we talk about the positive school of thought and the more negative school of thought, but we have to be prepared for all of them. We have to consider all of them.
Right.
So and then be strong and in the ways that we can as human beings. So that's, and I'm excited to talk about that, because that was an amazing experience.
Well, I'm really excited for it. So, I mean, especially if it's going to go in this direction, because this probably could have gone another hour with just a whole lot of different content. But in the end, everything all ties nice and tightly together. So thank you for joining me and us this evening. And you will hear from me, and I have a bit of an idea. So I will be in touch with you, and I want to connect you up with a bunch of people as well, because I think it will take you on that other path that you were talking about tonight.
I'm really excited about that. Thank you for that. And again, thank you for having me on. I love our conversations. This is just so much fun.
Thank you. I agree. It's not like you could just turn around and say, "Oh, hey, by the way," to most people. They're kind of looking at you like, "All right." So this was great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Michelle.
You're welcome. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now. Well, we've come to the end of another fantastic segment here on the Outer Realm. Big thank you to Jack Roth for joining us this evening. Big thank you to everybody in chat. Give yourselves a big kudos and take a bow, because you guys are just fantastic as always. So thank you, thank you. Tomorrow night it'll be a pre-record because my guest Mark Ollie is in the UK. And okay, this is going to be a bit of a tight one. So if anybody has any questions they want me to ask, because it's a pre-record, just send them to me. Let me put up the show email. This, hold on. Let me do this, because I want you guys to send me your questions. This is one that is going to be a bit controversial, and it's really, some people get really sensitive about it. But we're going to be talking about the conspiracy surrounding the moon landing. I know. I know. So love them, hate them. We're going to talk about the ones that have been debunked. We're going to talk about the ones that are out there. But all fantastic events have conspiracy theories. And for every little grain of conspiracy theories, might be a little grain of something else in there. So feel free just to send your questions in, or you can go on even go on the Outer Realm Facebook page and go under where the show will be, and you can post them there. But I will see them for sure through email. So I highly recommend that. So, guys, thank you for joining us tonight. And big thank you to Folgers Coffee. Big thank you to Dr. Snick, the sonic surgeon. Big thank you to Steve McGinnis. Big thank you to the United Public Radio Network, UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3, 107.7 FM. Good night until next week, because tomorrow's a pre-record. All right. Take care, guys. I'll meet you in the chat room tomorrow night. How about that? We'll have some fun. Night.